Hola so. Tanga zo pachi chuchu changyani chuchu tubari no. Any chuti den go zo tanchina. Okay, now we're going to start. Bematsutan, are you there? President, MDC.
Give me just a moment to allow him to unmute.
Okay.
Go ahead, Emma.
Okay. Hi, Rinpoche, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Bimala.
So, good evening, everybody. Friends, Sangha, first-time guests, if you've not joined us before for a teaching with Khenpo Karten Rinpoche. My name is Aaron Joseph, or Pematsutim, and I'm a student of Khenpo, but also I've been acting as the board president for the past 2 years. And I must say I'm very fortunate to have had that opportunity. And I just want to welcome everybody to this public talk tonight, which is kind of kicking off our 2-day annual winter retreat, which has been virtual for the past couple of years, and this year is no exception. This evening, Khenpo Karten Rinpoche is joined by our very wonderful translator, David Molk. So please welcome him as well. Thank you for being here, David. Jampa Tharchin la. And so the theme for tonight's talk is how to transform difficulties into the path of happiness, which is really the essence of what Buddha has taught, trying to eliminate suffering and find happiness that is actually lasting and not just dependent upon pleasurable external circumstances. So it's very important, if we want to find lasting happiness, that we can actually use adversity and difficulties on our path and not see them as something to be constantly avoided or rejected. And so Rinpoche himself has a long life of experiences with difficulties, which he might be able to share some of, as well as his teachers have, and have been able to use that to really remarkable effect. So as so many great Tibetan saints and masters in the past have done as well. And of course, we've all been dealing over the last couple of years, among all of our usual life circumstances, with this pandemic and all of the associated effects of that, and it's not over yet. So this coming year, we can use the teachings that Rinpoche is about to bestow to, make sure that we are living the best life that we can, and using this opportunity to become better, as Rinpoche likes to say, a good person, better person, best person. So with that, I'd like to introduce to you our Venerable teacher, Khenpo Karten Rinpoche. Good evening, Khenpo. Thank you.
Thank you, Bimala. Thank you so much. Okay. Ta tambo tilang chamala. Chinamba chamala. Ta beba nambala. Samde tashi delage. And the inji nambala. Samde tashi delage. Ta sane kawale jukuna chinambala. Samde tashi delage. Ta ngade sani. Gomo delage. Ta shukin. I want to say first, everyone, welcome. I am very happy to be here. I want to say good evening, everyone. Everyone. I want to see first how many Western people I cannot say, right? Anyway, lasso ni today, that day to Tani, that ring at you. Mamang la chushia de. What it is, Mamang la chushia.
So greetings to everyone, Westerners and Tibetans, wherever you are. Here it's evening. And so I'd like to welcome everyone to our talk this evening on taking bad circumstances into the path of happiness.
드레 머망을 추시야 인시 머망라 머망을 추시야.
So we'll have this public talk. Now we're having our public talk.
다 때라 남주 머망을 추시에 값서 나케지 라마라 소완데 바당 지 추주라서 바던데 자치모 시금에 시인에 드레 뱀들지 시긴시.
So I won't do extensive prayers in the beginning, but I'll do it just a little bit for auspicious reasons.
Normally, when I talk for the public, I don't do the long, my gurus, the lineage prayer. But I want to do something today, little short prayer. Om Yedharma Hede Barbava Hedin Tekin Tatangata Hiovade Tekin Jayon Roda Om Wad Mahasharmana Om Yedharma Hede Barbava Hedin Tekin Tatangata Hiovade Tekin Jayon Roda Om Wad Mahasharmana Om Yedharma Hede Barbava Hedin Tekin Tatangata Hiovade Tekin Jayon Roda Om Wad Mahasharmana Chuna Tamje Jule Song Deje Devye Jigbe Song Jule Angoba Kayin Gibjung Jimben De Ge Song Ola So that ring at you any Tamangla Kijashia Any Munepe Kijashia de Jusa de Nenga Chimbochi Takanga de any devilam la ya Julie Tapsi Don't have Takanga de devilam la ya Juve Tapsi that the Jisongo Yura that they pay Jusa the things upon the Chadi is.
So our subject for public talk is one I think that's very profound and important, as how we can transform difficult circumstances into a path to happiness.
That they let you down Machu Tangi Tambo Karishuki in a Chirang Chola. That I want to think it first, okay? Because here Tibetan, American, is two different, I can say different levels, different peoples here. If I say something to very easy to way, I think, I don't know. I want to make it everybody comfortable, you know. It's two different peoples here. Most Tibetan people, they know a little bit Dharma. They study many years. Actually, they are all, you know, Buddhist, already Buddhist. But here, public talk, some people, they don't know any dharmas. I just think, how do I going to talk today? Today, it's an Sambala Tangi, Dring Nicha, Latab Devichi, the Naranga Samsur Tang, any Loju Tang, Drong Tang, any Narang Geg Loju Lasso, but the Dele Jan, and the Kashijima Shugins.
So I'd like to say a few things about my own personal thoughts, as well as some stories and some accounts of my own life.
Indeed, it's an Tachetang Arangsu Machizam Nine, Hoandele Chizam Nine, any number chuganani, any Sakini Valim Pumbo, Zoki Pombo, Solar Pombo, Dushiji Pombo, Dusiji Pombo, Nashi Pombo, the Pombo, the Kune, Zupon the Unizong day, any Kanga Jum Machiwachi, Kangalatan in some chiamili. Kanga Raptor Rimba Mamboji on the art, the Giogori song.
From our Buddhist point of view, as soon as we take birth in what's called samsara, or a cycle of death and rebirth, and take on the aggregates of being in such a state, which are form, feelings, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness, that we really are dealing with a continuous stream of sufferings and frustrations. There may be different degrees, from lighter to heavier, but basically there's a continuous stream of difficulties and hardships that we face once we have taken birth in this kind of form.
Dungar yurite, the Dungar the youth sali jila, the Kangata Dungar the Yoda the youth sali jila, and it is Dungar tela, Doni sitangla, the Chibra Mandawa Mambo Yudevachi. The Nambuchuganani Shedu, Dungar lip sali capsule, Dungar the Churanka Tangdali. Dungar la chat sali capsule, Dungar could do the Kawali Yungu, Tetsa Machivaina. Jyoti le chine David Dungal lep sali caption, David Dunga to Churanga Tang the language. The Dunga tele yunti mambo yuris. Dunga tele yunti kare yuris to Chane, Rang Jula Dunga Chive, Chila Tine, Jina Hinjiata. Rang Julani Dunga Chiva, Kangal Mambo Chintiva, Chila Tine, and in Koalang Jongiata. Any Rang Julani Dunga Yunga Chila Tine, any Majan Jombala, so back any.
So given that we're facing many different kinds of problems and suffering, there's differences in how we deal with those. And from a Buddhist perspective, our way of dealing with it is that once the causes for problems and frustration or suffering have been created and we're experiencing that, then we should accept it and recognize that there are benefits that can be derived from it. For one thing, when we experience suffering ourselves, it makes us much more empathetic and compassionate towards others. We can really feel their suffering. Then, from the Buddhist perspective, when we experience a lot of sufferings and pain and frustration, it can also galvanize our determination to attain liberation. So it become a cause for us going to the lasting happiness of liberation. So it can increase our motivation. And furthermore, it can break our pride. If we've been too prideful, it can cause our pride to be lessened. And there's great benefits in that. So there are many benefits that can be derived from the suffering that we experience.
Any today in this and Taron, that Dungar youth sali capsule, Dungar tela, Tali Tapsi tela, Dungar Korana Capte Machawachine, Dungar Jotela Capte Javaina, any Tali Tapsi chick in Yegi, Dungar Jotela Tapsi Javaina, Penangarang Chodaina. Driver Shingdong and Driver Sunsan Raji. Dog Shingan Driver Raji, Chikishikeona, Dog Loma, the Meto, Kone, this Jay Devaina, Dog Zawa, Shinga Dombo, the Chen, Jay Matavaina, Dog Meto, the Toki Shing Loma Lasso, but the Chiengarwa. Pedina, you don't hurt the Dog Loma, the Metona, Chadi. That day in the Tani, Shinga Dumbo Nine, the Donga Yungsak Jude. Any Kumjong de Bas, Narang to Narang to Julie, Sim Madrawa. I didn't do chat, she rang to Mongaja Tado, Tata, Narang to Sim Madrawati, to Twaina. Any Mahon Balang around to Dongat Yungu Maris, Kangat and take you Maris.
And as far as remedying suffering goes, then there it's, again, from our Buddhist perspective, it's much more appropriate to try to counter that or prevent sufferings at their causal stages. if we can stop creating a cause for suffering, then we can stop the resultant suffering from arising. But otherwise, once the seeds have already been planted, like if we planted a poisonous seed in the ground, then that poisonous plant is going to come up. So once negative karma has been created, once we're dealing with what the causes of suffering, which is the second noble truth, delusions and karma. These delusions disturbing states of mind of pride and jealousy, aversion, anger, attachment. If we can counter those when they're at the causal stage, then we can prevent suffering from arising.
드네리자 다들 인도자니 당 나랑처럼 고와나나 되네 되고 요리 데리 그 값을 다들 동할때 다니세 다들 동할때 다니세와 있나 캡상기도 와 다들 동할때 가서 나와 있나 다니세와 있나 제당 나랑좀 남분하니 다들 출랑의 동할 용대와 출랑 그파 순지 상업 담는 레벨 설지 야와지 출랑 그 파멜의 제 양문아 파 유몽 속 사원지 담네 디 동할때 다다 추용대와지 주미반 대범은 용세야 근데 지 송그 유도 짜니 아니 줌데가 토니 나양 남부추가 토니 되고 요리 지금이 아니 다다 나랑 절로 동할때 용와이나 다때 내가 절로 동할때 용와이나 루틴디 토니 동할 용나 동할때 충충리 다때 동할때 아니 라네 아니 기와 지마칭 송숨 라서 봐라 라고도 냐와 라서 봐라 내 지금 값은 용와이나 아니 깔바 동다 망볼라니 다르듬이 바까 동할 근데 동할 지모 어떤데 요거 요리 송거리 근데 인도 안에 다때 동할 때 당도랑 아니 티 동할 때 용수 주때 가와리 용도 따네 아니 때라 갑대 잖아 어떤데 지 나와이나 야보 요리지
So another benefit of accepting suffering from our Buddhist perspective is that whenever we experience pain or suffering, we always recognize it as a result of some karma of our own, that we have created in the past, and so when we experience the results of it, those causes are being exhausted. But we accept it because we realize that it is something that we created the causes for in the past. And as far as preventing future suffering, again, it's to intervene at the point of the causal stage, when the causes for that suffering are being created. That is the point where we can prevent the suffering from arising.
아니 다들 동할 때라 다들 나랑 저 동할 용대와 때라 아니 출한 그 문은 양내 야보지다 돈의 야보지 땅해보지 시랑지 시시와이나 동할 때게 아니 징이 조선 차려야지 빼지 야와이나 아주 가지고 라마 좀 말해 봐 다보 다위주네 아니 지친 그 라마 만보지 동할 그 찐라 띠네 아니 첸디 루틴데 토라 좀 사지 그 공방 동할 그 까딘라 띠네 동할 그 찐라 띠네 나랑서 갑대 않은 면도 이 다다 갑대 짜대라 다이나이 갑대 짜대야 티 동할 때그 콩남발은 레버 가래 도리 시디 티 찐라 띠네 루틴들 좀 사지 그 공방 터지 나랑서 남부 추나니 징이 조선 차를 써야지 어떤지 용거 요리지
So we have this practice called bad conditions arising as friends or arising as helpful. So, when we experience suffering, if we just try to fight it off or just resist it or we won't be able to get this kind of benefit of really transforming those negative circumstances into very positive ones, such as the famous yogi of Tibet named Milarepa, who had many kinds of hardships in his life, but it pushed him to practice. He turned that into causes for great benefit, attaining full bliss of complete enlightenment. So this is the kind of thing that can be done when difficult circumstances are really used as aids on the path.
ngaranju dongar se ade dai na ji khate cha de ate khong nambala dongar ti chin de ka tine job saji ji kompang thobje ke gyore cha ka yore si ta ngachi dongar se ti chan dai na ji ta no
That which we regard as the enemy suffering, he took as a friend, a helper on his way to full enlightenment.
근데 cha de yore si ta de inde chane ta ti ngaranju 남자 준데 ngaranju dongar se na yanda ki se na yanda ta te kangar doni sidu 야슈 때 가래린 도시도 있잖아요. 소수 심숭이한테 뺏겠지 뭐야. 소수 심숭이한테 빼나 다단디 준조건 아니데 송 심숭도 봐 남란데 딘바 땅에 10인다. 심숭의 값을 딘바의 10인이가 돈이 송거리지. 심숭의 값을 딘바의 10인이가 돈이 심숭도 봐 남란데 딘바 땅에 10인다. 소라 밥장 송시지 나는 데다 탈모 줘르지. 자세히 뭐 좋아라. 내 저런 탈모잖니 쇼기. 저런 심숭이한테 딘바의 10인에게 소제 송나양 심대 남야 르마당 심숭로지. 근데 송요리. 용지 강의시나 담보 대송다.
The best kind of benefit we can derive from negative circumstances and hardships is to gain control of our own mind, to gain some direction, some freedom to direct our own mind. And as Shantideva said in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, a verse that Rinpoche quoted to the effect of mindfulness and introspection or alertness are tools for meditation. I beg you to subdue your own mind and gain control or direction of your own mind, even at the cost of your life. This is the most important thing we can do.
용치 강의시는 가란주 다다 강한 망보치 강하세야 돼 슬로칭이 철래와다지 사람 거기도 와 파기때 강한 뇌지성 마기때 강한 뇌지성 야기때 그 뇌지성 세네 강한 렘도 자는 저거 파쪽도 와 직세나
The reason for this is that when we look for the causes of our problems, we're constantly pointing outwards. We point out, oh, this problem came from over here. We don't look inside.
근데 있잖아요. 당연히 세와이는 직시나 강아 파ጆ네 용거데 강아 망보치 소시 삼로 단소 넣네. 소시 삼로 단소 넣어 왕기. 람 넣어 왕다 손 소시 소소로 강아서. 자차나니 자차 급제때 강아다 가리뜨는 용거요리 소시 삼로 단소 넣네. 소시 삼로 단소가 왕거. 만데 와지네니. 어디도 용거.
And in fact, the real source of our problems is primarily within ourselves, in our mistaken ways of thinking. If we look at it, probably like 90% of the problems we face are because of our own mistaken perceptions or mistaken trains of thought to get into those experiences.
니도 있잖아요. 내 남중 가래 싸움나 땅거 유시도 transform second wa jura tang se ya de meche chikin jura tang ko na meche chike dreng mate ke churang ke nganda ina ta long up chu khal no ko yori ti yog lo ni shu sum tin jura Train don't to go to Vesina, Tepchilla don't to go Mari. Kandis Tango City, Nima Rinani, Shokaya Lang, Shokaya Lani Kapsule. And it's also Chibozone. Choices at Pekachimo. Social Kare, you not teach all the choices. And it choose only some of Donshina Yapora. Gomjashina Yapori, Kandushina Yapote Majina, choices down say. Any titola, Kanganti, what I did a Mataparawa. Te Dumarawa, Te Tamala Yurawa. Some titola choices in around Kare, you are take the Simne, the Batikola King. De the Nichi Sewaina, similar Kanga Yongo marriage.
Now, if we're going to achieve happiness or experience happiness in our life, when are we going to do that? Like me, for instance, I'm in my 50s now. I've gone through 50 years of life. I've got another maybe 20 years or so ahead of me. And, can I create the happiness to those 20 years? No. The only thing I can really affect is now, present moment. What can I do right now to bring about happiness? So what's important for that? If we can do, meditations and practices, that's wonderful. But I think, one of the primary factors we need to look for is contentment. Having contentment in the moments of our lives as we experience them. And with the understanding from the Buddhist perspective of samsara, when we see sufferings, we think, yeah, this is the way samsara goes. This is the functioning of samsara, karma. Everybody goes through these things. But to develop, in ourselves a sense of contentment, moment by moment in our life. That's where we can do something, right, in the present moment.
Okay, something happened for you and me. I think very important is to think the only two things, the last two things. Of course, if you know meditation and the dawning and the loving kindness, it's of course, this is the best. But if you don't know, but at least two impermanence, change, everything is change, not only yourself. Your family is change, your friends is change, your things is change, your house is change, car is change, everything. One day, yours change. This is really very important. Because Buddha said, first Buddha's teaching is that he said, impermanence. Matapa, impermanence. First his teaching is actually Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths, first teaching is the impermanence. It's very important, the impermanence, the matapa, and also samsara. Oh, this is not only for me, everyone. That Richie said, any shopaya lang ni caps, kalasali caps, kala current sakayuna, petty yagin, kala current sakona, the kalatena, and ngarangarang chimbozokota, ngarangarang, oh, tendi shimbo chinto. Ngaran zui shimponto, ngaran sakayu samba, pechi yawa ina, chunchong pechi yawa ina. Kalala shimbo mene yang sosi samo pangso zoya doa.
So we can start with small things, like even just making our breakfast in the morning, making it tasty and enjoying it, savoring it.
Sometimes I always make my own breakfast. This is my best time in the morning. I make my breakfast. Sometimes I listen to sometimes radio and music. I am dancing in the kitchen. I am very happy. Then sometimes I eat it. Oh, wow, so delicious, Lama. You did a good job. Wow. This is I said myself. That this is a pen happiness is pen na tatang ngaran tata chuzu kase de tang echi peji ya. Tata chuzu Drogdang karma sumchu sodok. Drogda karma sumchu sodok lino. Drogda karma sumchu sodok. They karchachiga taught me. I am so happy to be here with Lama. This is Dharma teaching. 1 second, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. We are already happy. 5 seconds. That the Rinpoche in the karma te, karcha karma lando. Any karma te, any chusulando, chusu the nimalando, any nimate duntalando, duntate dawa londo. Any churanke, Rinpoche in the karma katoni, karcha katoni ya, comba damne, Rinpoche in the Suaina. Any sim jiposea that transforms in Juratang seat. This is tango, some of those. Samba. Samba gala kemola.
I think we can create our own happiness, second by second, minute by minute. Minutes, turning into hours and days. So I think cultivating a sense of joy, a sense of happiness within ourself, moment by moment, we can then extend that out. I think we need to accustom ourselves to experiencing happiness.
Lasso, Jurtaimbe.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Anything to cheer, anything you got in the Mara. I think she in the capsule. And she in the capsule. Ranjing the pair must seem like Koyang board at you, Yadota. Koyang board. Courage shown in degree so much. Korang. You Nayan degree, me Nayan degree. Nga de Nayan degree, nga ma de Nayan degree. Samba chick a pair. Seem like Koyang board. Haja Koyang board you go. Seem like Haja Koyang board. Samba chibo. They young song you.
Gondar Rinpoche, Yankee Sorna.
At the same the Swa in Arawa, Karma Tang, any rebate, the touch so tarry, the sum of Tang Devaina, that the sum of Tansate, the thing as you call some of Tangira, Nanchin the Chilla sum of Tang. Lakpar the Matapa, the Sabachik Matapa solat, shoot them the sum of Tang Devaina, and then Nimachilla Simla, they must Koyam Bochita. Ngala Nina and degree, Ngala Manina and degree. Onga dena and degree, soon the Sumbo den and degree, Nashana and degree Saba. Jachesan is some of Tawana. Naran to me some of the career in those cities and Pe must ante chimbo. Pe must in Zimba chimbo. Tangichi Chigo, Nete Masin and Tricamando, Samba chick, Leka the Mazil Mulang around the same day, and the Karesego same day. Ranjing Janda Chida Lang Asola takes some teaching Bojona or the Digi Chand of Godoa, Telepinto Yuris.
So by cultivating a sense of happiness in this way, we can develop an attitude that is very light-hearted, very open-minded, and easygoing. One that is very accepting of different circumstances. Thinking, well, we got something, great. Or we didn't get it, that was great also. Or maybe we're feeling good, that's fine. Or maybe we don't feel so well. We say, well, that's fine. Do we develop a much more easygoing, kind of light-hearted approach to life? Sometimes when we start into endeavors, it's like our mind becomes our own enemy. We kind of worry about how it's going to turn out, or we put ourselves under too much, pressure, too much clinging and holding tightly. When we can let go and release and be more light-hearted. This is, I think, the direction it's good for us to go in.
Benanganda Ngara Chung Kapsa, Tapelichi, Ngalo Sungu Kapsa, Madanga Dawa Sungu Kapsa, Amatong. 아니 갑데디 칼라 줘 아니 별라페 마시 자미다 페 마시 담보세네 때데 인데자네 소와페 마시 줘 근데 그 유름니 아니 지니 당아베니 찹시 강한테 아니 갑데디 페치 다 강아 mam보테리 다 유름 때데 지키토니 아니 디지니 곰발라 카타 나멜라 카타 자레용 잡주와차 당가랑 그 토니나 마칠라 근데 쇼리 디 강아데 그 셈 노송에시나 자와니네 노모도 나셈 다마데 툭네 셈칸 툭수한다 장네리모도 다다 다다 안디시 바 잡식자 따안데 강아들 띠는 알아 다다 백해산치 뭐지 다부다다 알아다다 나 별로 대자오나 파친데라고 제주 말다 알아다다 로마유리 주소유리 나랑 그 추냠네 하자 약보 용건도 말레핀도 침보 용건도 다들 찐데 지긋하네 근데 용이 다 뺀총 알아 자와이나 아니 장고는 뭐지 자와는 뭐지 인다 제이나 공로 충충 값으니 빼 디나지 아니 강한 망보진체 돈이 망보시기토 아니 공로 충충 값으니 아니 잡주를 패 하자 강한 망보지 강한테 다 강하실이 강한테 있는 값을 강하라 돈이 돈 시기시기 용도 짜니 다다다 장고는 뭐지 잠불 링기나니 다다다 별에 욕되오네 자와는 뭐지 벽이 자와는 뭐지 다다다 장고는 뭐지 잠불 링기 니마다 잠불 링기 장고는 뭐지 근데 차대 근데 인도 짜니 강하세야 돼 동하세야 돼 돈이 시당 시바이나 디 주름니 냠용적사 반드시 돈이 시고 유미 냠용적사 강하들 냠용사가 사가 용도 값을 야 징이 도선 찰세야 돼 강하들 그 진세네 아니 이는 이제 치는 와 랑근 가자 충동 와 코알랑 님ਜੋ 치는 와 어떻게 또 망보 지추가 손에 캡상데 동하다 강하가 토니 용대 왔던 거 소리도 왔어.
So looking at my own life, I've gone through a lot of hardships, Rinpoche says. At the age of 3 months, my mother was killed, and we were under the oppression of the Chinese communists, and there was very fearful, frightening situation, very painful situation that I was born into in Tibet. And then later on, I had to leave my monastery, escape as a refugee to India, leave my family and friends. And but looking at it, do I see that as having been some kind of terrible influence? No, there's been benefit that's derived from it. I don't think if that had not happened, I wouldn't be where I am now, in a very fortunate position where I'm able to do a good practice of Dharma and bring great benefit to students around the world, and without that hardships that I'd gone through, I don't think that I would have had this kind of benefit, derived this kind of benefit. His Holiness the Dalai Lama also, from a young age, went through great hardship in Tibet and had to escape as a refugee, at a very young age. We might think, oh, this is such a terrible thing, but it was a gift to the world. If he had been just stayed in Tibet, he would have been the Dalai Lama of the Tibetans. But now, because of these, what we would call bad circumstances, he's become a son for the world. He's become a leader, for a guide for the whole world. So, I don't think we should really look at hardships and sufferings as solely painful and problematic, because they can bring all these benefits, such as I mentioned: greater compassion for others, more of a determination to attain liberation, the lessening of pride that prevents us from learning and developing.
Dongar se ya de la Donny see ni caption yam young sound, the Chok toll a metela mas in trouble. Metela Yam young said that they bat young de wachita. Chok tony metela. Ya chuk tony in a dongar de la conduci banaji, dongar killa tin the jin in the children, dongar killa tin and calling in the children, dongar killa tin, and it ran you can aja chung the royal as. That keeps on mamboji. What they attended into us.
So again, whereas problems and suffering may be seen in general in the world as just bad altogether, but in our Buddhist practice, use of sufferings, they can increase our compassion, our renunciation, and lessen our pride.
Tadilang 근데 제 가장치 뒤져요. 와 삼바. 가장은 이제 때돼야지. 와 삼바라. 대 아니
Notice.
대응은 이제 징나 따들라 네 가장 가래라비오리 시르자네. 뒤트이야 나한테네. 디스고 데모 살마다 나라 데모 뜨다 한만 통과 데모 소나위오는 이용 시다당 아크티 디나는 고테 그쪽이요. 디나는 고 쪽은데 당아주 공도시바 난지 누군 누구매나 누가 그 찐데 가와니 용거도 대사모다 누가 그 찐데 가니 용거도 삼 누가 그 주데 가와니 용 찐데 가니 용거 대사모다 대랑 고다 가래송 접시 거리 짜지 자네 르다 셈이데 송 접시 거 디나니 셈데 송 접시 거다 셈송 접시 시야 등에 공도시바 난지 남자 준데 셀라 딱 보자네 말한 참 마시바 참아 신이 주기 아주 말다 마시바 강아 참아도 낭샘데 그 주기 아주 지하차 지하단 말이다 대 근데 이제 자네 다타치니 신을 딱 보잡대와 이나 칼레르 시샘을 딱 보잡네 다 난춘하니 곰스 시에요 아니 지 림바다 시비 되게 토네 남자 준데 신을 딱 보잡 이바 가게 시금이나 초시세 심태듯이 용도 땅 아니 공도 시바나 이 참아 마다 바리 참아 동아가 아니지 삼바 세 거양 보지네 근데 내가와 이나 아니 되게 요리 니나니 내한테 가래라 때모 살마다 때모 나라 뛰당 한만 통과 때모 소나비오는 니 용세야돼 난추가나니 때모 살마다 저거 살마다 없이 때모 나라 뛰 쉬다 나라 땅 소소소시 쉬다 땅 근데 지 세와이나 주랑 그 문진 통만 용을 그때 뭐 침보지 주랑 그 생분하는 이 그래야지 어떤 것이
So if we're going to prevent sufferings from rising, we need to get to them in the causal stages, when they're formative stages, because that's where we can prevent them from arising, and so what this means is that we shouldn't primarily look to external means to protect ourselves. We want to protect ourselves and others, our body and our mind, especially our mind. And so we go about doing that through taking care of our mind, through meditation. And I've written a couple of verses about this. Don't look for shows outside. Watch the show inside. If you are lucky, you'll discover a show like you've never seen before. Don't dig for others' faults. Don't point your finger outward. Pointing your finger inward. Correct your own mistakes, please. So by taking care of our mind, even if we don't know, meditation, like I mentioned, cultivating a sense of contentment and understanding that change, transitoriness is the nature of everyone's life, the sufferings that everyone meets with, and then taking care of our own mind, going inwards. We may discover that there's all sorts of things to discover on the inside.
그래서 삼바다 주랑 그때 마음은 되게 라야나 가장은 이 답변이 세임바데
Lotus. Okay, so Rinpoche has wanted to use something that he's written before for our public talk today, and wants me to read it. So, transforming difficulties into the path of joy. In a Dharma gong to wake us from ignorance, Rinpoche says, I wrote, don't be like a mother searching in the west for a child she has lost in the east. Having turned the mind inwards, don't seek happiness outside. So what can we do about it? It is only the first step to stop seeking outside for happiness. The next step is to identify the methods to unveil inner happiness. Here I would like to offer a suggestion that came to me while reflecting on this subject. This is a practical and simple contemplation that anyone can do with a little bit of discipline and consistency. To contemplate happiness in the course of a single day, it is helpful to think of it in the very moment you find yourself. For instance, to begin your day, you can relish your first meal. If you're having it with your family, you can take a few moments and truly appreciate that time for however long your breakfast is. In essence, you have created happiness for that duration. Then after breakfast, as you begin to meet people, you can direct your attention toward appreciating the positive traits in the individuals in whom you interact. Even when you find troubling aspects in someone, if you'd redirect your mind to your own faults before finding one in them and genuinely appreciate the person before you, then in that moment you experience happiness. Psychologists say now that perhaps 95% of what we see in another person is based on our own mental projections imputed onto them. Actually, the great Buddhist saint and philosopher Nagarjuna was saying just about the same thing in the 2nd century. As your day progresses, pause to appreciate your lunch, whether at home or at a restaurant. Even if lunch is unsavory at a restaurant, at that moment, if you're able to think of all the homeless, migrants, or refugees, and countless others literally starving to death, it will, in that instant, help transform your mental disposition and bring gratitude and happiness. Arguing or complaining over it, on the other hand, will only cause you distress. Likewise, after lunch, if you engage mindfully with your body, speech, and mind during dinner, or any activity for the rest of the day, then you're able to establish happiness within a 24-hour period, a day with inner happiness. If you go with the whims of the untamed mind, you will never be able to find contentment. You will never find happiness. There is always cause for self-made discontentment that must be watched and constantly corrected. Conversely, if you repeat the above meditations from one day to the next, you will become the cause of your own happiness. Practice this repeated shifting of perspective away from noticing flaws or distraction and towards appreciation, gratitude, and the moment-by-moment beauty of life. Don't take my word for it. Try it and see what happens.
That's all. This is what that they bouquet told the children in Chitola, you think a bouquet told Maji, console the shiji, but the search, she one job.
Rinpoche will say this in Tibetan for the benefit of the Tibetans.
Now I have become the Sabbatasis translate. Okay. That they Karela Urisinati Nantinamara. Tangachi, same with the Chisia, the same with the Chisia and the Jetusanda, the Tambo Nini Korang. Tatange Konda Hibana, Kacha Tony. Pen a magic in Yamachiki Shopaya, Langni Kapsu, Karichiki Yuri, Shopaya, Langni Kapsu, Shoja de Zoyo, Timuni, Legamambo Chicate, Shoja Chizoyuna, Shoja Shimbo Yuna and Mina and the Sosuyajo, Karina, the Shoja Choshi Sene, Shoja Tishimo, just a sa. This is why in a Karayunga, this is some of Tawaina, Sosu Jibotanga. Shoja that is a Matsujuda, this is 600. And young Yina in your own account, this is only young, go time it Salira, Sana Sakayuri, the later Salikabs Sambati with Sada. And it take us a social Sambati botini Chagura. Ope Tinaji, and in Yamari Regina, the Gin Mela Tuyata, Melakeja Hiata, Melandrevasiata. The Merkichik Padioni Hajamaya, what in the Matona young, Tapsin and Arangun and Aranga sent the Matuasi. So she said the social double jay the cage in Borwa. That's Nichi Jin Digmandik is on in Tuba Jab the Desiva, Nika seem to put it. The day in this and the Teleja social seems to at the cage in Boy to Tani. Korankita here down Digumena, Narankan Kanta say, same the matter of the Tapi say. The Nichi Sivaina, Chizu Jini told any same Tuba Soa. Bechibo Chong Tasoa, Chizu Nisum Jin Rota Soa. Then you go Jalo Petinaji. Lekata Sawa Kandichi Sigan. What is it? Tamala, so sick as I'm not on so good. When I'm around the Captain Jasia, the Captain Jad, Patriotic, Jatamba non treasures, around you, Savani in me, somebody. You think I is in a total Najar Chimbo. But Tamala Najar Chimbo. Male last me, Najaja, Conori, somebody Euro. Take a non trahaja chimbos. Koya simchiri, I am simchiri, Nika simchiri, Yinji. Kora same took the Pagini Chi. Monday, what Churanga when the young day at it. Koran Numongo wang the same to Yaji. Aka, the Numong said it, then drip of Chimboria. Koranga call a Numong the Zuni to the city, Mebet in Jurando Kondo, Saba. Tango Papa the Dr. Song you are. Pena Chick Melon Tupa the Shoni, Liba the Shuni Capsule. Any Kansa tell a Niji, Koranga Julia you been Numong Telani Capeja. Korang Julia you been Numong de la Capeja City. Aka Korang Julia you been Numong the Jula Mache show. Aka Konyin J Samba Numong Tios and Numong Yolo. All these are not Tawaina and it keeps on Solaraso, keeps on Raso. She need to buy Chocomodo, she need Jari Tocomodo. Yingy, all the name that in this scene, could visit Jurum, in the summer of Swaina, and it's in the ship deck. Whom I ship day you are the Mantowasi. Any ship day may have any ship dead in Yamso. What did you is? All the digit that didn't do Wasamba. That's only you might carry it.
Then Rinpoche goes on to say, dealing with difficulties. When we meet with frustration and difficulties, if we are overly sensitive and very resentful of it, our frustration and pain will only become stronger until it feels like there is a mountain oppressing our body and mind. Although we have physical and mental hardship, if we are less impatient and don't develop resentment, the discomfort, while it lasts, can become lighter, like a dandelion seed puff, and easier to bear. Again, when we meet with difficulty, we should realize that it is our karma and not let it bring us down. Rather, we should seek a means to dispel it. If there is nothing at all that we can do about it, ruminating and worrying about it, that will only add another layer of suffering to the frustration we already feel. A better alternative is to look inward, and if we can transform our mind, we can definitely dispel frustrations. As said in Guide to the Bodhisattva Conduct, troublesome beings are present throughout space. There's no way I could overcome them all. If I can just overcome my mind of anger, it will be just like overcoming all enemies. Though I try to cover the whole earth in leather, where could I get the leather to do it? But leather on the soles of my feet works the same as covering the whole earth. When we meet with difficulty, we shouldn't just try to deal with it on an outer level. We should learn methods to inwardly transform our mind. Difficulties don't arise without causes and conditions. We should check what those causes and conditions are. Many of our difficulties we may find are produced by mistaken ways of thinking. When we meet with difficulties, everything is relative, and we should think about it in perspective. If we compare our difficulties with someone who seems to be free from these challenges, it will make our suffering appear greater. Whereas if we compare it to someone destitute who is tormented by suffering, our own difficulties may seem quite small. When we experience hardship, we should always think of the less fortunate, and especially those who are currently undergoing suffering. If we always think about dharma, impermanence, selflessness, interdependence, and so on, it will make a big difference when we meet with hardship. We will be less disturbed by it. If we can henceforth plant instincts in our mind for the dharma, even if we don't believe in reincarnation, it can make a big difference in how we deal with the many difficult things we encounter during the course of our lives.
That's all. Tate tangi la cha song ju rang. All that's all.
Tamadi Jiang Sungsarwa.
Ore ngai la cha. Tangi yang de okay, now I translate English to Tibet. He become his translator. Tangi tatina na kare she yori si de chane ngai 남자 jun도 가서라 강아 용니 값을 강아 충청도 소수 침벌을 줘 요거도 와. 반복 강아들의 충청 무시 요 말. 안디나니 강아대 생근진 땅 토니 제레 끼는 누바 망스거도 와. 강아 나대 용거 말이 거대 용거 말이 삼바 생을 그서 똑버진들 가드이나야 강아를 문두 이는 쳐바나지 바보거리지. 제레 끼는 누바 망스. 델레장 아니 강아를 니 값이 티스치 심자 침보당 티스 주트바당 주신들이 세대와이나 강아 용어 간시라 강아 충분도 그러지 신급 반나시 신원나시 배나시 니 강아의 양도도 그러지. How I am good translator Samba?
Oh, you add a few words here and there, but it's okay.
Oh, okay. Just like you did also same thing. Okay. Then 어들이 자네 다든들이 다디 유고드니 다 뭐뭐 참아는 게 좀 하고 같이 가르치어 버리시지 자네 심지 무슨 남파지 대다 용지 용물랑 토베 셈데 찍고는 다데 탐지 총당다 사등 탐지 고요 어쩌더니 고에 갈라랑 남들 잠지 고에는 사등 탐지 요당다 어떻게 시켜요 다데 가르치어 버리시지 자네 잠블링 그 참아 나랑 저도 받기는 매와 땅거나 어때 응어다리 콩어다리 시도 참아 시당지 참아 세거나 대상 작업에서 그들 쓰기도 뽕랑노 코짬이 땅거를 시는 드친춘 순자다 몸도서 드이나니 어떤 신이 찍찍을 직직 땅거도 와 직짬이 땅나 뒤절니 랑거리 니 잠이 땅나 뒤질 이랑거리 된 직진 춘이로 와 그랑 라직 세나 니랑 쓰기 엘레장 라이 다마데 가와는 독자지 와이나 토베센데 찌경 야와이나 소수 해당 소수 콘도도 좀 야와이나 사된 그다 참아드니 좀도 그리 매도 그리 소리 베네 잠블링 사자 가사칼은 로고요나 추랑 그 잠블링 참아 꼬아 그좀 두고 말아와 레레장 추랑 그 상고 비장지 상고 야보지 뉴는 송아이나 잠블링 참아 꼬아 그좀 받지 바리 꼬아 그좀 야지 바리 소리 어때시? 아니 유것들이 말아. 다 강아 오니까 없어. 나랑 기쁘 강아 말와. mambochi ka kanga lem de kapsa chi rinder sisa tela trichi ke doa ngen khadu ne te sa sang ku yo law ku yo mala kanga yung ne kapsa o nga chipul karachi ne de kanga yung ko khol tinde ya bo khonsol tinde ya bo sine ani rinder sisa ten thombo chi la ani haje dechi de dimba supo juchim bo tinde chi la ani rinder sike doa din rinder se de kapsa ni sosola kanga yung yo 다 강아 유와 간신은 린들 시사디 소소를 미사지 빼나 야와라 차당도 말 여달에 티공도 동안 다 망보유리 미 나니 사준 통지 미리 잡죠와 강아 어디서 꼴은 린들 세와이나 주랑 빼소남 침보로 주랑은 강바유리 주랑은 주보유리 주랑은 왕보 창대유리 주랑은 영수 쪽바유리 될 뜨다 다 간다 잡고 뜨사 뜬조를 요디 자네 강아세야 돼 동하세야 돼 뜨사 뜬조를 요네 아니 삼로 땅와이나 아니 소수심도 초시가 돌아 마파 고아째도 세브라 용수 쪽바 참아가 동하다 하고 그러지 아니 디나니 땜들 땅 아니 다미 땅 마다바 라서 버티고 난출을 때 스파차 야대와이나 아니 강한테 니 값이 아니 돈이 시당 하자 집어치 뭐요리지 어 나한테 근데 너든데 든들이 나서 사봐.
Well, I would like to translate one thing that Rinpoche said, which wasn't, I don't think it was quite there in the English before. In the context of cultivating contentment and enjoying life moment by moment, he mentioned that a lot of our problem comes from pride and thinking that we're right, and if any problems come up, it's because of the other person, it's their fault. And rather than doing that, he expressed this kind of something that Nagarjuna said, that when this kind of thing happens, don't see the person as the enemy, but that delusion in their mind as the enemy or the problem. And Rinpoche said, when say you have an encounter with someone who's angry, seeing that delusion in their mind, that disturbing motion in their mind as a problem, and feeling sympathy, feeling compassion for them, thinking, oh, I'm so sorry, they're being disturbed by this demon of this disturbing affliction of the mind, and how fortunate I am not to be, experiencing that. But in that way, having compassion for them as another sentient being, another living being, just like oneself.
투지 치사바 아니 다 tata yang lagin sanje tinjiru mochi ke namtha dubachi yorite chike sonaro chite pe yabochi yorite nge kadui na ngarang ka te samang tangde ge yo melati ko ke che ge yo wa ngachu namtha shie de ka sanje ke namtha shie de ge yo mari sanje sumbe namtha shie de ge yo mari ani che ladong tu sukol mari tata matho ndi na ne yo wa tan de ne lo ni shimsen ro yo mari tan ji ke lama ji ke namtha ri da 하장 양치 모르와 어딘데 되잖니 대직송 야와 있는 슬랍진 보살.
So Rinpoche wants to have read another account. This is of an incredible example of taking hardship into the path. About his root guru Sanjit Tenzin Rinpoche. So Rinpoche says, I want to give a brief account of the time my root guru spent in prison. In 1959, all of Tibet was seized by Mao Zedong and the Chinese communists. At that time, many innocent Tibetan lamas and tulkus were put in prison. My root guru was also put in prison. All the lamas were put together in one part of the prison. Prison became like a monastery, completely filled with many lamas and monks, but they were beaten and tortured beyond measure every day. Many lamas and tulkus died in prison of starvation. My root guru was in his 30s at this time. He had to spend 21 years in prison. During that time, he not only practiced Dharma, he focused single-pointedly on nothing else but the practice of love and compassion for others in a meditation of giving and taking called Tonglen in the Tibetan. When you give, and Tonglen means giving and taking. So when you give, you mentally send to others your body, possessions, and all of the positive actions that you have created or will create in the past, present, and future. You even send it out to undesirable enemies, demons, and obstructors, and so on. When you take, you mentally take upon yourself others' pain and suffering, sickness, bad karma, hindrances, and everything negative. Even though you have the wish to take away their suffering, however, this does not mean that you will receive all of their suffering and bad karma. Rather, because of your strong compassion, wanting to take away their suffering, it will destroy all the causes of your own suffering. And you should visualize this happening as soon as you take away the suffering and its causes from others. Your only wish is to take away others' suffering, but the result is that your own suffering is lightened and ultimately eradicated. Because of Rinpoche doing this very practice, the prison naturally became like a retreat house for the Dharma. Many lamas and spiritual masters from different areas were placed together, so they secretly exchanged teachings with each other and had many discussions about their experiences and realizations of Dharma. Because of this, it became a very good, conducive place for the practice of Dharma. The communist Chinese thought that if they could throw all the lamas in prison, they could wipe out Tibetan Buddhism. Not only was this intention of the Chinese government not achieved, the lamas had found a place that provided many years of unexcelled conditions for the practice of Dharma. Finding the bad conditions to be a blessing in disguise, it became like a spiritual center for them all, and their experience and realization of Dharma grew more and more vast and profound. There were signs around Sanjay Tenzin Rinpoche that revealed his realizations. For example, one day 5 groups of people saw Rinpoche in different places at the same time. Some saw him outside while others saw him meditating inside. Some saw him in the kitchen, some saw him talking with others, and some saw him drinking tea. He appeared to different people in various aspects at the same time. These were signs of his developing realized qualities of the paths and stages of spiritual practice. By the power of his mind, he was able to transform an impure prison into a sacred temple, a Buddha land. Lacking such knowledge, your body could actually be in a holy temple, while mentally you are still in prison. In Dharma, it is said that everything arises through the power of your mind. You now have the chance to use your mind in a similar way. Not only does being unhappy and resentful not help, it also harms yourself. After Mao had died, it was announced that the prisoners in Tibet would be released. Around that time, one of the Chinese prison guards said to my root guru, "Your time in prison was over days ago. Why have you still not left for your monastery?" This guard was a young man who had seen signs of Rinpoche's spiritual realizations and had developed great faith in him. He had served Rinpoche in prison and had become Rinpoche's very close friend. Rinpoche said very sadly, "Oh, I heard the bad news. If only I had the chance to remain in prison a few more years, then my practice would probably have become fully qualified. In any case, today I want to convey my deepest heartfelt gratitude to the Chinese government. For 21 years I have stayed in meditation retreat with my food, clothing, bed, and everything kindly provided. In our Kagyu tradition, every monk must do at least a 3-year, 3-month meditation retreat. I had done a 3-year retreat before, but I had always wanted to do a longer retreat. But my responsibilities in the monastery had given me absolutely no time for that. Now I have been able to spend 21 years in retreat. In its true nature, this is a retreat hut, not a prison cell. Today I give my most sincere thanks to Mao and the Chinese government." Rinpoche even composed a short doha, a song of spiritual realization, about how his practice had been greatly boosted and enhanced by his prison experience. I don't remember it in its entirety, but it was very eloquent and beautiful.
라소 다들이 다들 파체 낸 도르드지 마시죠 그 인사바 도르드지 보게 돈이 마시잖아 다들 nga tsawa lama lakin sanji tinjirum bochi ani chitok du jangap chung aglo ta bu che la ka ngan theli kaps lama ta truk mambo che ani seleng kha ka chung kha na chung khang na chu ko kap de ni chung khang de pe lama truk mambo che de si chu ni kaps chung khang de khorang gomba la chi cha na de yine ni ma ta pa re shi la ni chun ba de so pe dog jong na chu khala de so pe thap jo de shi ri 아니 르모치 텐데시 조데를 갖다 대가서 공로 순주서리도 아니 르모치 남자 주는다 추냠니 시에마고 하니 디토라다 사바다 닌지 디토라니 돈링 그 바테니 르모치 그 나네 냠니 나나다 도당 그 쪼라 데 나도 돈링 시야데 마치 똥시야데 파 안드시네 랑게 줄라 게가 자와당 랑게 줄라 돈이 그 다와다 산쇼 그 시는 뭐지 라서 바다 사바 닌지 데 저깔보 그 쳐다 파 나오면 파당 아니 천집이 값을 아니 심지 이제도 받아 동할라서 받내도 저 영수도 봐 참아 철들성 써마시게 여러 당가 좀 뭐지가 어다 때다 나라 고메 어다 때 파체 나라 따다 강아지 돌니 고메 써봐 집시나들 영수 들어와 생각고서도 뭐지 근데 이면도와 가사 아니 그 줄라 돈이 그 따와다 락바다 산주 그 생각 내가 흉침 뭐지 오나 설랑 주 내도 득득 안시 그 코랑 딱 가르쳐 인주라 땅네 아니 게베스 홀라 땅네 철 렙니 값스 소시 사바다 인제 다기티 니바다 공는 프리제게 진들지 차도 고도와 딱 제단가 돈이 시야데 니바 치슈데 들 차데 어데 따티 걸 마무 마주세 아니 들으셔야 아니를 뭐 제가 근데 시다티 투다는 낭는 들으시죠 다 로니히 작기 탐발라 중앙의 용어 로니히 작기 토네니 준바 참마다 마오 제동 시에니 값이다 준바 참마 르르 땅이 맞지라 다 지난주 나는 소시 말로 초그리 실르르 땅인데 르고치 따로 중앙의 용도와 ane kapti rinpoche le shabso nang rokpa si de ni ja bugu chi sara lo chung chung ji ane de ka rokpa si de ni ane koran ni chambo la ji cha koran le takpa la de ji sara ko ka takpa la chi de rinpoche ki chi yan chi mo ki ta dan chi ma de mambo chi lama mandawa chi koran ki ja ka sara a de ri de jane ni ta nima chi la re 다 띵훈이 되더리 띵훈이 가래리 시도잖니 띵훈이 rumboche nima chigla ani ma mandawa ngak thondang mandawa ngak khashi ji ge rumboche so ni ani pekun dosi khashi ji ge sanje din je nalo le gom jab jong dosi khashi ge mal ke che shi ge khashi ge jan dong dosi ya ta dinde sin thondang mandawa ta de su ji ge thondang mandawa ngak ta ba de sin ji do en cham chan de jin ja sha ya dang ni ta 갑자기 rumboche 지구에 인지 말이다. 근데 중앙 능드네. 하자 빈진기 지구 삼점을 잡아 하자 망보. 여대자네. 그래서 참는데 봐 인저로. 중앙 그 서로는 참참은 자셨는데 내 용거서로. 다 간다제 뒤 뜻이 다른 치마데 뒤자. 대간 통거서로 그런 거. 이 니마질로 rumboche라다. 뭐 참아 중앙하는데 땅 차례. 주 가르친 로그미시디. 근데 rumboche가 왔다. 대다 땅민이지. 다 들행에 땅민 깨자지 고서. 당에 은행 늘라 용탄의 로카시지 대주를 주나 나가 냥리다 하자체 동보지 공별을 로사리지 다들 왜 당민 형소시 나고마 공발을 열리가 가서 가지도 니마가 로소라 로스 나왔으나 이게 두관을 대고 요리지 대대인지 이네 tel에 망사치 대 사람이 그 알아듣는 지 눈바 요대 이네 공바가 되죠 자완이 때 마소시 코마소시 다 강다장 다 다디 ngala pe masi kawa zambo ani jami kongrin tang ta ngala ani lo ni shi chaki thambala ani khala saya te jablu chuya te ani khangba te ani tate chongkhang chawani ni mari chamkhang na ngan chamna de ji ja so si ani de ne tuji chi so ni ta ani jini kone chongkhang na cha mayang na hona ani gur de chi ti ne chom jam do chongkhang mari lahang ri chi chi so na tate yaboji tingam no 하자 님보지다. 하자 님보지. 어떤지야. 다 how translate. How's I am good translator samba?
Oh, excellent. Except that you added one little point there. Rinpoche mentioned about some of the signs around the prison.
Come on.
Sometimes there was many rainbows that would show would be
sometimes
around the prison, and not only Rinpoche, but there being, probably many holy beings there in the prison, which it was a sign of.
Oh, the little yata can't that journey. Tanga chichi kangan train cups. Kanga sinayanda, chitis and drink mandari in cups and what you send to Tapo Jayate. Tajik the Melachun Zoxin, a milk and drink mason. Not to miss me, she got the Pekin Tachi, not in draw me, she got it. And in the time, Makorang of Patun Zoxin, Tajik the this non in a Makorang the Jun Zoxicador. Tate Nanchi Tony Pen non Chimbori. Tata Luduk Sumbanaji. Any Pena Melachunzo Masters, Mel Ninji, Metic Jula Yupen, New Mount de Lan, Takate Jagoris. This is called the Pek Ninga Chimbonsan.
So it's so important that we take care of our mind. The nature of human beings is so funny, that as soon as something goes wrong, we're immediately pointing our fingers at others, and the problem is their problem. They made the mistake. But this, from the point of view of our following teachings of Buddha, is a big mistake.
That's all need to see that you took a very come to do. That's all need to see the Namja Jund nature and the correction do Johnson City and Namja Jund and Conto Shubanaji. Send the Dechi, not to Dechi Goyona, Dechi Goyona, Inchi Mini Simpson at the package.
So as I always say, if we really want to experience happiness, it's so important to watch our mind, to take care of our own mind.
Tang is nge takwa re chila gom jana yakbo yuri, gom jana yakbo yuri siki. Gom ja sidi tele, andi sidi lahangchi nana tsuye dego madawa. Drogen la churang, nga tsu sem te pe masi, kichik chik la tokpa hacha mambo chi. Pe masi, sem te kan samsana nga tsu la sem la zangi nidowa. Sem madara sem chikta, sem terso sem chikdowa. Sem madara sem te nga tsu la dal cha kadowa. Sem terso sem te nga tsu tawa la ya chi dowa. Sanji je kumpha la ya tingki di deri dowa. Sem madara sem te nga tsu nisong la maang peze ke sem deri dowa. Tate kari sem te nga tsu dakpo ja. Tate nga tsu lakpa la yor ta nga tsu. Nga tsu dene yor, danga yor ta. Tata nga ran tsu dakpo ja goya ke sem te dakpo ma ja wachi. Ani nekab chila nga tsu zubu yarbo te tang. Ani ti chi ingi ching kangpa tang, sa yin kangpa tang, shing. Ani tan rama da jo tang. Ani moda tang, ngu tang, ta tesi kola, ani tsu mele ke, ani choshi zangli mele ke. Te chang chang dakpo ja magwa ke sem te dakpo ma ja wachi. Tende yung kondo waasi.
So I always speak about the benefits of meditation, but meditation doesn't happen, just while sitting down. It can also happen while we're moving around or walking, and in fact, it's crucial that we always are paying attention to our mind, because our mind is so quick. It can, on either the side of negative things or positive things, it can quickly do, many things, and it's constantly pulling us in different directions. The our subdued, peaceful mind is leading us to liberation, whereas our turbulent, disturbed mind of the delusions is dragging us down into worse states of being. We don't pay attention to what would be really good to pay attention to, and we try to take care of a lot of things that aren't that important, like external things, like gathering wealth and property and so on, whereas what would really be important, to take care of our own mind, we don't pay attention to that.
Lakwarde nga ka namsha junde kare sangpo yore sidu chane ngaranzu kontro siya tang ani ngajar siya tang jingdoa kontro tang ngajar tang ani soso la chakwa danjin siya tang tisi kola pe masi nga su jung de chot jung tongya de pe kale kapore xa mambo te kichi jung mari sangwa soso la ping do te sungchob si siya nga la te me de marang wari xa mi nyeb chi tong kando ngarang pamjor yarjin roko mendo ngajar mina me mambo chika ngajar siya de ani chi karese gore chi nga chu nyumong so ka ngajar tel siki yorwa teni indi tani tisu kola konori ne ini ngu simpe kale khapo teni risha teni indi tani tisu kola nga chu chung la tani namsha jute nga chu sente kare cha deri si na nyumong yongsu nyumong tsama ka sente kangde ona sente nga chu garbage deri cha dita churang ka khamba na garbage dawa mangboli cha na trima ki churang deto ko marwa ta te tsama mazu ki pardo pe ti na yi nga rang chu sente decha xedang ti nani control ta ani lakpa de ngarang zong la chayin chimbo chakpa siya de pomo ko chakpa de jibo mare chakpa siya de tsama la nzimba tang chakpa tende rinduwa desu ko la chung la ti san tong na yabo yu de chung la tong na.
So it's sometimes difficult to see the problems that are created by the pride in our own mind, anger, our great attachment, or selfish, kind of self-centered kind of attitude. It's difficult sometimes to see the problems inherent in those. because we have so much attachment to ourselves. We think we're perfect, we're fine, and so that these are actually protecting ourselves. That we need that pride in order to get ahead, and and provide for ourselves and so on. So I think it's important to see how these these afflictions of the mind actually do disturb us, and there's negativity around them. They're like garbage in our mind. Like if we let garbage pile up around our house, it would start to stink, and we wouldn't be able to bear it, right? So if we have these kinds of harmful, disturbing attitudes in our mind is just filled with them, then we're going to have a lot of problems. So we need to look at the problems, the faults that occur because of these excessive, self-important attitude, the attitude of pride, anger, and so on.
Okay, Tujichi. I want to say thank you, everyone. I really want to say, this is the last my words. I want to say, everyone, please go meditate. This is, I beg you, I request you, please go meditate every day. Let's 5 minutes in the morning, afternoon 5 minutes, evening 5 minutes, 50 minutes. All time, morning 10 minutes, afternoon 10 minutes, evening 10 minutes. Also meditation have so many different meditate, like the impermanent is the best meditation. Today we're talking about the happiness. It's best meditation is the impermanence. I know people, you don't like the hurt impermanence, right? We don't like the hurt death. We don't like the hurt too much, like these things.
We don't like to hear about. We don't like to hear about.
Oh, thank you, Samba. But we have to accept one day. Nima chila nga chuti mata pa se mata pa ngune kin jura chimbo yoya ta nga chu zupu thole yongor nima chila. Da de chamale yongor wa. De mayong ngune tata chine nga chu ngo se ne. Ta break se ne ti sola samo tang de wa ina. Mata pa se ya de sen shibde tunze ka chawa yono mina de mata pa. Churang mata pa nima takpar gon jab de na. Mata pa nima takpar gon jab de wa ina. Ngay jacha jata ba gratitude churang la semle dechi yongorisi.
So at some point, all of us are going to meet up with the great impermanence, or the gross impermanence of death. And as a way of preparing for that, to be aware of the constantly changing nature of existence, the transitory nature, the impermanence, if we continually contemplate that, we make ourselves aware of it, Rinpoche says, I guarantee that will bring us happiness.
So we're going to
So if anyone has a question or two, we could entertain those.
Feel free to unmute yourselves. You can unmute and ask a question or use the raise hand function. If you know where that is, it's on your Zoom toolbar under the reactions or in the little squares. Raise your hand or just unmute and ask a question.
Rinpoche, I have a question. Pamela. So thank you so much for the teaching. It's always a really important reminder for me to practice when things are difficult. But I also find it very difficult to practice when things are going really well. Because I feel like, oh, things are going really well. And then I don't feel that urgency, out of this sense of needing to practice, I get a little bit lazy. So do you have a recommendation for how to best practice when things are going very well?
Nyamli ya shu de kare chi go de
아니
여보죠.
캔 냠바 데서
라.
냠len 제 라버레 점점 페마 소점기 아니 점점 키보탕도 자네가 제 가버 연결해서
네네.
간신에 냠와만 보여와 아니 네츠 야포 예베 갑라 아니 탑시 약시가르 제거래 디 샘슈 냠len 샘슈 케야
내가 여보 값어.
라레 내가 야포 예베 갑라
내가 여보 값어. 다들 남자 준도 취소해야 돼. 취소해야 돼. 특파 난시 코랑 남자 준도 기보 쇼나양다. 당가 주치 지나양 아니 라마 공쇼고티. 동나양 라마 공쇼고티 삼바치게. 당가랑 주 나주 땡 사보지로 송아이는 기도 링이 간듯이 송 기보 쇼나양 공쇼고티. 도보 쇼나양 아니 라마 공쇼고티 삼바. 기나 개와
내가
핀디 남카 가마. 동나 동하라 kunjika 동하라 그 잡속게 바쇼 더 소요라 어 던데치 싸움나 땅네 아니 더 시고리시
도레스 아니 림포체 야 내가 야포 예베 갑라 알레 디 쓰남게 산에 연결와 제상아 양키야 쓰남 사고 그래스라고
아레 먼트도 수남 싸고 다도 수남도 내가 그 수남으로 그래 다도 수남도 세야를 내 라오지 다도 수남도 거래 저 충정지 그 뒤에 수남지 용하라 다 수남 망보지 마음 벌 수남 때 라스지 싸고 와이나 다도 내가 그 주랑 그 르데오이 바 심바치 보이 바 수유버가 배샤 유버값스 아니 때 초라 마당을 지네 도보 값을 취세 기보 값을 취 마세와 이나 아니 야보 용거 말해 기보 요리 값을 취세와 이나 아니 주랑을 수유리 주보 탐보리 심바 야보 요리 밤조 요리 아니 마음 벌 수남 치보 그 살리게니 주의 사원데 대가서 좀 요리시
Okay, so we do want to maintain a steadiness of practice through good times and bad. You know, practice of Dharma is like adding a drop by drop, and it's most effective if it's continuous. And so, when things are going well, we need to realize that this is the result of good karma. This is the result of merit that I've created in the past, and it gets used up so quickly that just having this good fortune now is using up tremendous amounts of merit. And so if I don't create more merit, I'm not going to see anything like this good of condition again in the future. So letting it be a reminder that this comes about from the creation of merit and good karma, and that there is every need to create more of that if we have any hope for such kinds of good conditions in the future.
다사람무지 두지치.
올라서 아니 다 들어와 매나 아니 같이 되라 창소니 매들아 창요요기 아니 산이 가서 다 로르를 특마를 같이 참는 데가 요리 아니 때 다자는 산이 가서 참는 데가 그 저기 쇼바 주소 거니 좀be 어떤 데 쉬어야 다때 거기 거기 그 시에가 저와 주소 겁나도
So if there are no more questions, then we'll stop here. And as we announced, that our yearly retreat is happening from now into tomorrow, starting from 9 o'clock tomorrow. So please, everyone, you're welcome to join us.
Right, Beba? You have announced anything?
Yes, so just to let everybody know, if you haven't already become familiar with the schedule for the retreat, tomorrow morning, Rinpoche will be giving the final teaching, final verses of the teachings of Gampopa that he has been giving for the last year.
No,
And
but tomorrow, the morning, the first teaching is the guest, Lama Kozi. He gave the teaching about the metta, right?
So we have a guest teacher, yes, a Vietnamese Zen monk. He's actually American, but he's in the Vietnamese Zen tradition. He'll be giving a teaching on loving kindness. And then also Rinpoche is finishing his teachings on Gampopa, and then on Sunday giving a teaching that was composed by the great Jamgun Kongtrul Rinpoche for his students. And it's just a beautiful series of verses of advice on how to practice Dharma. So we all hope, and then after that, probably pretty early, late morning, early afternoon, we'll be finishing the retreat and then doing our all Sangha board meeting, which and everyone is welcome to come, and we'll be electing new board members. I'll be stepping down as president, and we're having a few new changes in the positions there. So we invite you to join us for that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And if any of our other board members or non-board members have an announcement, please let us hear that.
Hola, so da pache me sare ni dange. Wa da molam si yogi. Da jin sim
So
jin dam
we'll do a prayer now in conclusion.
da jin sim jin dam je lo ju sen lo wa le sin je lab de so ju lam den lo wa le sin je lab de so lan tu ba so wa le sin je lab de tu ba yi sen ja wa le sin je lab de so da so nam je je dang den ba ye je dar sam ba yi jin de ba da ne do ke so ba de ji ben so ne wa le je wa le sin je lab de 심진 담제 대당 딘저 제행에 로 담제 다도 동바쇼 사초슨 바간다 사라 유바데다 군제 모란 르바쇼
May all beings' minds turn towards Dharma. Dharma become the path. May the path be clear of deception. May deception arise as innate wisdom.
토치낭 참아가딘치 Thank you everyone. 투지치 삼바.
Thank you. Thank you, Rinpoche.
Today I am become your translator. Lasso ni saninjiong Tuchinang. Thank you so much everyone. Then I hope see you tomorrow.